Hi everybody, welcome to our webinar on this amazing World Environment Day, our webinar called Rebuilding Nature Together. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I'm currently sitting on Wurundjeri country and I pay my respects to their elders, pay my respects to the elders of all the countries on which we operate and sit on around Australia. And as I think about here in Melbourne, the key totem species for Wurundjeri is bunyal the eagle. And if you've been floating around Melbourne the last few days, bunyal the eagle will have got a bit of a buffering with the weather, or a bit of a battering. But I actually imagine him soaring across the country today, looking down and looking at the changes in the landscape, but also being inspired by all the things that he can see as he looks across the landscape. So thank you for joining us and being part of our webinar today. So I'm Heather Campbell. I'm very privileged to be CEO of Greening Australia and to be your host today for today's webinar. So today is World Environment Day, and the theme this year is about being inspired by nature for climate and for the future. So when I think about what inspired me with nature, I think back to my childhood, growing up in the bush of New Zealand, having that constant bird song of all the amazing birds over there and being able to run wild and just really enjoy the habitat. And then you'd race home because you had to see David Attenborough and Jacques Cousteau and see all of those magical places around the rest of the world. And then when I reflect upon Australia and the work that we do and we see across Australia, whether it be pygmy possums or in my place, on the edge of the Yarra Valley, brush-tailed phascogales, or the wombat that'll be disappearing across the road at 11 o'clock at night, or those wallabies that are eating my garden. It's fascinating, the amazing species that we have here in Australia, and it really inspires me, as I know it does our whole team, to continue to work to protect and restore nature, both for the climate, and we're in a changing climate, but also the future for my kids, grandkids, and for all species. So today we're going to be sharing some stories. We're going to be hearing from different team members as they share how the world that they operate in has inspired them and the work that they're actually doing to address both climate change and to restore nature and to rebuild the habitat. So we're going to hear from Andrew Woodroffe, who's a restoration operations lead within South Australia, and he's going to talk about his work on the Fleurieu Peninsula, building habitat for the amazing glossy black-cockatoo and the work that's been done and the challenges that have been done. So you can see the image on your screen now. We'll be talking about this sort of environment. We're also going to hear from Lanice, who will take us through restoring wetlands and reconnecting the floodplains and the tidal flows along the Great Barrier Reef catchments. And up into Cape Palmerston on Iwi country, with the traditional owners of that area and how they've taken over the monitoring the land that has been restored and that we've restored together. And we're really, really privileged today to hear from Deb Clark from Iwi Aboriginal Corporation, who'll speak about the Cape Palmerston project and what it means for Iwi traditional owners and get their perspective. Wanted to also just share some of our highlights so far. So it's been amazing that it's been 10 years of our work on the reef, and since the Reef Aid project was launched, the plantings across the Eyre Peninsula are just absolutely phenomenal, and every year we're adding thousands of hectares to that. One of the really exciting projects I really love is the work in the Big Scrub. It's a tiny area of that subtropical rainforest is left within northern New South Wales. And we're privileged with our supporters to be able to actually be part of rebuilding that. And when you're up there in that environment, you just see how quickly plants grow. And of course, weeds grow really well there as well. But what the team were describing to me is if you can actually manage the weeds for the first 3 years, then the plants have grown so much that they actually shade it all out. So it's absolutely phenomenal that we're able to be part of that. The superb parrot, which you can see there on the picture, is some work that's been done continuing to build habitat and food for that. We couldn't do this without our donors, supporters, volunteers around the country, whether that be in seed work or also in work in relationship to large acreage. We're doing lots of canopy projects, which is carbon projects. So that's our carbon business, and that's about rebuilding habitat and utilising the carbon markets. It's just the vehicle to help fund that and actually do that and to have that biodiverse carbon outcomes. Wetlands work, which Lenise will talk a little bit about. We've had our second harvest at Seedex, which is a 100-hectare irrigated seed nursery about 3 hours north of Perth. So basically a seed orchard to grow trees to produce seed, because we know that we can't get enough seed in the wild to do the level of restoration work. We've been doing seed training around the country and continuing to do urban work, particularly with cooling the schools. I also just want to highlight the picture on the top there. That is from Nudging Nudjung, which is a site that we've been restoring along the Murrumbidgee River. And it's that beautiful high country area where you see the rolling hills, you see the river, you can get that sense of connectivity. And the platypus is often coming up and making an appearance. So today is about sharing some of the stories, sharing the impact of our work. It's also, we're in the middle of our final tax appeal campaign. So if you'd like to donate and support us to continue this work, there will be a QR code at the end of the session on the Q&A slide, or you can just click on that or just click through the website, because really do appreciate the support that we get. As we know, there is so much work that needs to be done across the country that every dollar helps to actually make a difference to get that work done. Recognise, I saw some hands go up earlier. If you've got any questions or queries, please put them in the Q&A. We'll have a session for Q&A towards the end. I'm thinking that some of those hands were raised were probably because of around the sound issue. We'll try and resolve it for the next one. But if you've got any questions for that you want to ask our presenters as we go through things, then please put them in the Q&A, and I'm going to try and curate them all so that we can have those two-way conversations towards the end of the session, which will be absolutely fantastic. So I'd now like to hand over to Andrew, who is going to share some of the highlights and the challenges of the work that he's been doing on the Fleurieu Peninsula. So Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, Heather, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for jumping on. My name's Andrew. I'm Greening Australia's Restoration Ops Lead here in SA, and I'm joining you today on Kaurna country. I'll be taking you through some of the work we've been doing, planting fodder trees and creating habitat for the Kangaroo Island Glossy Black-Cockatoo. Give you a little bit of an overview of the bird itself, a little history of how we've got to where we're at today, and what some of the work looks like on the ground. And I'll give you a bit of an update on the bushfire that unfortunately has affected the Deep Creek area and how it's impacted our plantings there. So the Kangaroo Island Glossy Black-Cockatoo is a critically endangered cockatoo found exclusively on Kangaroo Island. It's the smallest of Australia's 5 black cockatoo species, and it's a strict dietary specialist. It feeds almost exclusively on the seeds of a single tree, the drooping she oak, Alocasuarina verticillata. And as an isolated and highly specialized subspecies, it's much less adaptable than other species, for example, the yellow-tailed black cockatoo, which has over time adapted to feed on introduced pine trees amongst other native species. And the KI glossy hasn't made that shift, so planting more she oaks is fundamental to providing a reliable food source to ensure the cockatoo's survival. It also breeds very slowly. The birds don't recover quickly from disturbance events, which is what makes every loss so costly. The Fleurieu Peninsula, just across from Kangaroo Island, once supported extensive she oak woodland. Unfortunately, that's largely gone now. Clearing over many decades has stripped the landscape, and by the 1970s, the glossy black cockatoo had disappeared from the mainland entirely. On Kangaroo Island, by 1995, the population had collapsed to just 158 individuals. The subspecies was on the edge of extinction. Recovery efforts since then have been significant, and a shout out to the KI Glossy Black-Cockatoo recovery team, the landscape board, and all of the volunteers and landholders involved there. Thankfully, with their efforts, the numbers have responded. The most recent count puts the population at 446 birds, comparable to 453 counted in 2023. That stability matters. It tells us the population has held its ground rather than declining, and that given the right conditions, there's potential for growth. Greening Australia's connection to this landscape goes back to 1998, when we first began work at Fisheries Beach, eventually restoring around 65 hectares of grassy shirk woodland there. And that work has laid the foundation for everything that's followed to this point. Fisheries Beach is adjacent to our plantings at Deep Creek, which is pretty aptly named. It gets steep, it gets rocky, and when it's wet, it's really difficult to access, even with a 4-drive. And that shapes a lot of the decisions we make about timing, access, and how we move people and equipment across the landscape. Last year's planting program at Deep Creek ran across approximately 260 hectares of land. To prepare for this planting, we installed around 5 kilometres of fencing. We controlled and removed several hectares of gorse along creek lines. And gorse in gullies can be a real problem in the area, and it's a real issue for sheep farmers as it sticks in the wool of the sheep and reduces the price the farmer can get for it at market. I think it's a little bit of a video of one of our contractors slashing some gorse there, which was pretty epic. So we had a team of up to 20 planters working there pretty intensively for about 2 months, and we installed 51,000 odd plants across the 260 hectares. The majority of the plants, around 23,000, were drooping she oaks, targeted for the glossy blacks, and the remainder are a mix of eucalypts and a biodiverse mix of native species suited to that landscape. Because that area also supports a substantial kangaroo population, we had to extensively guard our plantings to give them a chance of establishing, and that meant ferrying guards across the 260 hectares by hand, which was an absolute logistical nightmare. All of this is on extremely steep, rocky, wet, challenging terrain. This project wouldn't have been possible without the assistance and support of the entire SA Greening Australia team, as well as a skilled network of contractors, suppliers, and most importantly, funding partners, in this case, AstraZeneca and One Tree Planted. That followed on from an earlier program in 2023, when Greening Australia partnered with WWF and landholders to plant 19,000 trees on the Fleurieu, primarily she oaks and eucalypts, to support the recovery. And then, unfortunately, we had the fire. Climate change has increased the threat of bushfires to all of our project sites, and unfortunately, this played out in February of this year when a fire broke out in the adjacent Deep Creek Conservation Park, burning through critically needed remnant grassy shirk woodland. Our site was also impacted by this fire, with around 95% of our plantings from 23 and 25 being burnt, as well as approximately a quarter of the Fisheries Beach site. Amazingly, post-fire monitoring estimates show that the newly planted she oaks were remarkably resilient to fire, which isn't the known science or the usual case with she oaks. In many areas, we saw upwards of 80% survival, and in other areas where the fire was more intense, the survival looked to be around about 50%. We think planting technique, as well as the fire intensity and ground cover, had a role in these positive survival rates. Sadly, however, in some areas, the survival wasn't as good and the plantings were almost completely razed. And we now have a major logistical and financial challenge as how to best salvage the planting areas on this site. The fire has made the need to continue conservation efforts in the area even more crucial and time critical, as habitat restoration takes time. She oaks and nesting trees need years or even decades to mature, so continued planting now is necessary to secure future food supply and breeding opportunities. Despite the fire, the population of the glossy black-cockatoos is steady, which suggests that the species has the potential to spread given enough food and nesting resources are available. There are also encouraging signs of movement. Recent sightings of glossy black-cockatoos on the mainland, combined with population growth tracking east across KI, suggests that expansion across Backstairs Passage is a strong possibility if suitable habitat is waiting for them on the other side, and we're trying to build that habitat. Ongoing planning also improves broader landscape connectivity. The Deep Creek site sits in between Taliska Conservation Park and Deep Creek National Park and delivers benefits for other species that might use great grassy shirk woodland. there are at least 6 other threatened or endangered species that could benefit from continued planting in this area. So moving forward, as I said, she oaks take time to grow. Nesting trees take time to grow. The planting we do today is insurance for a future population and is not an immediate fix. That's why continuing this work now is so important. Each year we plant is a year closer to a landscape that can support a self-sustaining population of glossy black-cockatoos on the mainland. And these gains made over the past 3 decades are real and hard won. The project is about making sure those gains aren't lost to the next fire, the next drought, or the next decade of inaction. So thank you, and over to Lenice and Deb, I think.
Thanks, Andrew. And thanks everyone for joining today. So I'm coming from Yagara and Turrbal country, and I am the Associate Director for Water for Greening Australia. So today I just want to share some of the fantastic work that we're doing on wetlands throughout the country. And obviously wetlands are Australia's most biodiverse and threatened ecosystems. And, you know, we're restoring wetlands right from Victoria up to Queensland. So some of the slides I'm sharing today are a snapshot of wetlands around and some of our work we're doing across the country, and then a focus on some detailed sort of works that we're doing at Cape Palms and the Mulgrave. So some of these works we're doing restoring growling grass frog habitat down in Victoria, and also in Victoria the Warralinga swamp is restoring brolga habitat restoration through a hydrology modification. And some of our other work that we're doing around urban areas and urban riparian areas includes community planting at Glenthorne in South Australia, and some fantastic work we're also doing at the Archfield Wetlands in southeast Brisbane. So that's just a snapshot of some of the wonderful wetland work that we are progressing across Australia within Greening Australia. And now I just want to, I guess, move on to some fantastic work up in Queensland. And I guess one of the things that has really shaped the work that we're doing, especially around coastal wetlands, is the modification of tidal inundation. And a lot of these wetlands in these areas have been highly modified through installation of tidal bunds. They've been modified through drainage, we've had a lot of obviously sugarcane development up in these areas. And so the hydrology has really changed in these systems. And so we're really thinking through that as we restore some of these coastal wetland habitats. So this first project that I want to talk through is the Mulgrave wetland, which is up south of Cairns, and working with some wonderful partners with the Medangi Rangers and also with the Mulgrave Landcare Group, and also working with a wonderful landholder, a 4th generation cane farmer. And this area here was previously farmed with cane, but due to tidal inundation, this site is no longer productive for cane. So the landholder has been working really closely with Greening Australia to restore this site. It's a very special site. It sits right between on the Mulgrave River and also very close to running out to the Great Barrier Reef. It also sits next to World Heritage rainforest areas. So it is a really spectacular and special site. So some of the work we've been doing on this site, there were 3 tidal gates which were installed on this wetland, and our initial thought was just to remove these tidal gates and bring salt water back in. When we started looking through this work, Dom, if you can just go back to the previous slide, that would be great. When we started looking at the work on this site, we started to see that salt water was already coming into this site. So we partnered with James Cook University to really embed the science, and this includes hydrology modelling, into actually understanding how we should be restoring these types of sites. So what we've done is, what's the status now? What's the current saltwater inundation doing at this site? And that's the current. And then we look at 25 years in the future. And then we start to look at, well, what's going to happen with climate change in this site as well? And then we can really ensure that we're doing restoration, not just for now, but we're doing restoration for the future. So it becomes really resilient. And that restoration is also factoring what's going to be happening in 25, 30, 40 years' time. Thanks, Tom. So what we can see here, and this is how we actually build our restoration plans, we can start to understand how certain areas on some of these wetlands how long saltwater is going to inundate these areas. And then we know what species we should be planting in each of these areas, whether it's mangrove species, whether it's transition species that will tolerate saltwater. This starts to factor into our restoration design. And you see on the right-hand side of this slide, this whole area by 2100 is predicted to have saltwater inundation into it. So it's really important that we're embedding this into our restoration. This is tropical rainforest, some of these habitats, but we also know there's a range of transition and saltwater species as well. So that's what we're really building into this, this project. And it's really, I guess, our thinking of how we actually restore some of those coastal wetlands. Thanks, Tom. So just another really special part of this project and really embeds and how we work on these coastal wetlands is ensuring that we're incorporating traditional owner knowledge and also local knowledge into our works. So this is some of the work being done with the Medangi Rangers on this site, really taking out pond apple and replace it with mangrove species, and also with the Mulgrave Landcare Group, who really understand the local species and the local restoration practices here. And I guess what we really build, the outcome of these projects is bringing these partners together. We're all working together in this region, and it creates a long-term vision and management for this site. We create a restoration plan which embeds traditional owner knowledge, it embeds the local land care knowledge, and it also embeds science and how this site is going to be looking in the future. So that's really important. It sort of really factors in how we do the work and how we restore coastal wetlands. So I really want to focus and use this same, the way we've actually looked at the Mulgrave Landcare, the Mulgrave wetlands, we've embedded this into the Cape Palmerston wetlands. This is a very spectacular site. This is just a site south of Mackay, and it's within the Cape Palmerston National Park. And this site was previously bunded in the 1960s and has become now a freshwater wetland, which has been totally invaded by Hymenaconium plexicollis, which is an invasive macrophyte. A lot of the environmental and ecological values of this site are no longer, are all very deplorable, but low dissolved oxygen, we have low species diversity, and we have no connectivity back to Clark Bay, which is the Great Barrier Reef, which flows into this area. So when we came on this site, we knew the traditional owners. This is a really important site for them, the Yui people, and also really important for the Queensland Parks and Wildlife who manage this area. So through this project, a key part was the co-design and bringing the right partners together. And also a key part was doing that hydrological modelling. So really understanding what do we need to do at this site to actually bring the salt water back into it. Thanks, Tom. So part of this site, there was a 100-metre bund that was put into this wetland that stopped the salt water coming in. So our initial thought when we brought all the partners together was like, well, let's remove the bund, but we don't do, it's in a national park. We certainly don't want to remove 100 metres of a bund. We want to minimise disturbance while always also creating salt water and the best environmental and ecological outcomes as well, without creating large disturbance, because this really has really high cultural values at this site as well, which are really important. And that was really part of the co-design process with Yui traditional owners, also with Queensland Parks and Wildlife, and also with our design, really trying to understand what is the minimal disturbance to give us the best outcomes as well. So we had the traditional owner, the cultural heritage surveys, we had environmental surveys, we had soil surveys, we had a whole team of people coming in to actually design and really think around the best way to do this, the bund opening of this site. And really it was a first for the Queensland Parks and Wildlife as well, because trying to do this work in the middle of a national park is very, very challenging with the approvals required and really minimising disturbance to make sure your outcome is actually going to be a positive outcome for the site. Thanks, Dom. So again, with the hydrological modelling is really important because we really want to understand that what we're doing is actually going to have a positive impact. So we start to look at what's the current status, and we can see there in the current and also with climate change put over the top of that, that the salt water is not going to be coming into this wetland. It's around a 12-hectare wetland, and you can see how close it is to the bay there, and that single tributary is what's actually, connecting or not connecting that wetland. So then when we looked at different sized openings, a 5-metre opening, a 7-metre opening, a 10-metre opening, to actually understand what's the I guess, the least disturbance we can undertake to actually reinstate the salt water back in. And so from this modelling, we're able to actually understand that a 5-metre opening, and we're able to look at what the impacts of climate change is as well, because there are surrounding communities around here. So we had to understand the broader impacts to actually how much the salt water would be impacting here. Thanks, Dom. So through the co-design process, which was all done through a project reference group with the UWI traditional owners, we successfully opened the bund in November 2025. And this is the first image. Queensland Parks and Wildlife went down to the wetland at this time, and they're able to film. This is the first high tide in November following the bund removal. So you can see that salt water immediately was connected back into the wetland. And even some great imagery we had from this was, we had fish immediately coming into this site. It was actually quite remarkable just how quickly we could actually see the impacts from these works. So it's fantastic that they were able to get down there and film that as well. And this is just a recent photo. I think we were down there, I think it was February or March. We were down there, and while this visually probably doesn't look amazing, the impact on the hymenacne was immediate. Like previously, Queensland Parks and Wildlife was spraying this with herbicide, and it just wasn't cost effective, and obviously it has broader scale impacts. So what we saw immediately, death of the hymenacne, and it's actually progressed further than this already. And also what we were seeing there and was on the left there, that was before, and this is what it looks like after. Already we're seeing mangroves, mangrove recruitment back into these wetlands. We're seeing fish come back into these wetlands, and this has only been about 5 months since we actually opened up the bund. So just, how quickly you can actually see these impacts from this work. And I guess also important how much embedding that scientific knowledge into how we make decisions, and also having the traditional owners on board as well, that really some of the cultural knowledge which is embedded into these designs is so important. So I'm going to hand over, because I'd love Deb to have plenty of time to talk through this, which we've given her now, just around her experience. We partnered with UWI through the whole of this project, right from the proposal stage, right through the implementation. So it was a true co-design process with the traditional owners, and just how much that Western knowledge and cultural knowledge and how we're able to share that and how it influenced the whole project. So I'd love Deb to share her whole experience, and it's been just a wonderful outcome for this project. So thanks, Deb. I'll hand over to yourself. Deb is the UWI traditional owner. She was also the Blue Carbon Project Coordinator as well.
Thanks, Lenise. I'm so passionate about this project, I could talk about it all day, so Dom's going to keep me on track if I speak too much and go over our time. My name's Deb. I'm a UWI woman, proud UWI woman, and I'm fortunate to live on country and been able to work out on country as well. I just want to pay my respects to our UWI ancestors, our old people, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal leaders, elders and people from all countries logging in today for their ongoing connections to their country and the knowledge they have and their spiritual connections. For UWI, where this project was down at Cape Palmerston is on our southernmost boundary of UWI country. It's a really spiritual and significant place for the UWI people. So when we first were identifying wetlands and projects to work on, it was really important for our elders and all our UWI people that Cape Palmerston, we were so excited to be able to work down there. QPWS, we'd had a relationship with them, and they'd also had aspirations for over 20 years to be able to do something. They had been previously did some work with the hymenacne down there that wasn't successful. So it was a project that we were all really looking forward to walking this journey together. So it started back when Green Australia approached us and was talking about a potential blue carbon. And for us, we had no idea even what blue carbon was. So it was really new to us, but from the get-go, that relationship we built with Green Australia and walking us through of potentially what the project could do, and input from our elders and our people of what our aspirations were for the wetland, we came together, and the partnership, the core partnerships on this project were Green Australia. We couldn't have done this without them, and their knowledge that they brought and the support that they've given us and walked this journey with us from the start, right through to recently. And also the relationship we built with QPWS. Partnerships in this sort, it was one of our most memorable partnerships we've had and projects we've delivered. And when we look at partnerships, it's so important because we're walking both worlds, Western ways and cultural ways. And it was really important to us, and what made our partnership so strong. And it's given us a real high level of what we can expect in future projects we work in now. We had regular meetings, very regular meetings weekly, and so our communications were really good. From the get-go, there was so much respect from all parties involved. From the very conception of co-designing this, we felt like for Yui people that we really were predominant in what we wanted to see in the aspirations. We were able to put some non-negotiables in, which was bringing our people home to country, which is some of the elders in this photo here that you're seeing, and also about being able to embed our cultural heritage, and our importance was our responsibility of caring for country. At times through the journey, we've had to have some tough conversations. They have always been done with a high level of respect from everybody. We looked at things when there were a bit of challenges. Together, we looked at how we overcome that or how we can move on. Down in Cape Palmerston, one of the issues we have is this is a really remote area. So for us to even be able to access the area, it's depending on tides. So there were those challenges, but we were able to be successful in the delivery of the whole project, just working together and being flexible in that as well. Sometimes there's challenges with Western ways to cultural ways. We have responsibility of bringing things back and information back to our elders and our community. But that wasn't too bad with this project because we set from the get-go a project reference group where we had Yui board members, elders, and some of our community and rangers on board. So we were updating, and we felt like we were bringing our people along this journey the whole way. And they also approved and guided some of the plans and activities that we were looking at and putting in place. So it was a really good journey that incorporated everybody. So I think one of the things is that this project and working with Green Australia has been able to bring is that two-way learning. We are a young ranger team. We have 18 to 24 age group, our rangers, and a couple of senior rangers. But as I said, this was a really new project for us. So through the delivery of this project and being able to work together on this journey, it gave a lot of opportunity for upskilling of our rangers as well. We were able to, last year, I attended 2 conferences where we were able to share this journey and the progress of restoring this wetland with everyone who participated in the conference. It was really great. It's a good way to network and to bring people and ideas and everything together. But what this project also did, it was providing a lot of training and upskilling for our rangers. So down in Cape Palmerston and, further around our area, we were able to put the rangers through some croc awareness training, which our Duganis, our crocodiles down there, do exist. So we wanted to make sure everyone was safe. We also upskilled with four-wheel drive training, given the hard access it was to, you had to travel down the beach to get into the national park. And that's through shifting sands that can be very soft. soft at times. On top of that, we actually put everyone through water quality training and upskilling in that area, which has been fantastic. But the whole journey from the concept of it and was bringing so many partners together, specialising in their own areas, from acid sulfate to working with EcoShore to JCU with the desktop analysis. And throughout the whole journey of everyone coming on, we made sure our rangers came down and they were able to walk side by side and learn. And then likewise, we were able to share our cultural connections and of high significance to us in the area as well. It got to the stage where we were meeting that regularly and doing it that we kind of felt, well, at one big family, which was really good. But with not only was it some of the conferences and training that we were able to do, we were also able to do some cultural exchanges. Myself and our senior ranger, Bron, in the picture here, we travelled down to Cubby Cubby country and we met with them and had a walk through their Blue Heart project. And it's so good to see what other mobs are doing on their country as well. So we do anticipate, hopefully, within the next few months of travelling up to Mangala as well to hopefully do a cultural exchange up there and have a yarn to those mob as well up there. I think, you know, one of the highlights of working with Green in Australia is the high respect in the way they walked with us, not in front of us, not leading, but we walked side by side throughout this whole journey. So for Yui people, I think one of the things that really stuck out of us being able to be involved in this project and restoring the wetland was we were able to fulfill our cultural responsibilities, which is our law. For Yui people, we don't see ourselves separate. I'm a daughter of this country, you know, through my mother and grandmother's people here on country. And for our people, we see the country and ourselves as people as one and the same. We're interconnected. The spirit of our old people are on our country. And when I go to my dreaming, my spirit will be on country as well. So it's a responsibility that has always been handed down from our old people that we continue today. And so it was really important, both spiritually and culturally, that we were involved, but not just involved. You know, this was one of the ones where we feel like even at times that we had a real lead on, and that was really important to our elders as well, because our old people are the knowledge holders of our storylines, songlines, of our trading routes, language and law, and all those in our way, in our time, was what kept our country healthy and sustainable. So we live both ways now and walk in Western and cultural ways. And it's important, you know, I see it as being very valuable because it is bringing both Western and cultural ways together that we can get the best and provide the best possible outcomes we can for our country to be healthy and sustainable again. One of the other, what this allowed too is being part of this project was bringing our elders back onto country, and that was really important. And some of our elders hadn't. One elder, she said it had been 30 years since she touched feet on country down there, and another one since she was 8 years old. So the spiritual connection for those elders to be able to be down there and for them to get a greater understanding, although we held meetings and showed a lot of pictures and kept them walking with us along the journey as much as we could, they had an even greater understanding when you can walk on country and put your feet down on land again and feel that connection to it. And we feel how country is healing, and we've been a part of that. And also it gave a much clearer understanding, being able to visualise the area and what we were aiming to do and where we were going with that. So it's been a remarkable journey. And when we opened the Bun Wall in November, we had elders come down, and we did a turning of the soil, and that was really important for them to be present and being part of that as well. So we had, after the bum wall was removed, we worked with Green in Australia, and they came down. Some Green in Australia participants and staff came down, and we're bronze standing there in this picture. On the North Bund wall, we needed to put a bit of stabilisation into that, so we put mat in and we revegetated that with water plants. And that's part of our ongoing monitoring, and it's been holding really well. Our southern bank of the Bund wall, it was pretty stabilised with the sort of rock, and also with many roots of existing trees holding that together. Part of us now is we continue to go down and we do intensive monitoring. We worked with Green in Australia towards the end to develop a really high-level monitoring and maintenance plan, so we can capture all the data, and that's important too. We had our aspirations of bringing this back from a freshwater wetland back into a saltwater, but we need to collect that data to see how this is going over time. And being a real first for this sort of project, no one had actually opened and been able to tackle the hymenacne issue, especially with the inundation of water coming straight from Clark's Bay. So we were also working with Green in Australia as it came closer to the end. We worked with RDK Consultancy, and that was to identify other potential sites on Niue country and just do some basic data to see if it was viable sites into the future. What we also worked with Green in Australia to do was they assisted us to be able to put in further applications for funding, which we were successful getting, and this was allowed the project to continue. And we were successful under the $34 million reef assessment program, which was funded by the Queensland government as part of the Queensland Reef Water Quality Program. So that's allowed us now to really extend the project and really focus on the monitoring and maintenance and data collection, with our aim is to be able to embed a co-management process of this site post-program way into the future for Niue people. So where are we now? We go down regularly, we take our rangers down. We are always continuing to learn as we go along, and that's one of the amazing benefits of being able to work with partners and on projects and on country. We regularly go down, we monitor not only the waters, we will monitor them in Clark's Bay, in the wetland, but also at the mouth of Clark's Bay. The hymenacne in these photos is great. When we were down there last month, we've actually seen dieback actually reach the middle now. So it's really exceeded our expectations, and especially while the weather's changing. The tides aren't as high, so not as much water is getting in, but we're still seeing the dieback of the hymenacne. The beautiful thing is, as Lenise said, as part of this, we're already seeing fish and a lot of activity on our waters with dragonflies and everything over. And we've actually, to the last count, we had 87 new mangroves, little shoots coming on the north bank of the Bund, and 36 on the south Bund around the water's edge. It was a challenge when we first planted to re-veg and stabilise the North Bund wall. As I said, one of the challenges was accessing the area. So to get water onto those plants regularly, we really worked closely with QPWS, and whoever was down there would water them regularly. When we went down, we thought we had lost about 50% of the plants due to the dry and not being able to get enough water to them. But then the wet season came and hit us, and those plants actually grew back. I think we lost about 4 or 5, to my memory, in total at that start. So we had a really good wet season, and so that's really stabilized a lot of the plants and given them time to find their roots. We also go down and we monitor the vegetation. We worked closely with the construction crew when they came. They were fantastic we had our cultural heritage walk down there, and they found some artifacts that we repatriated back to country close around, and it just really shows our mob's connection down there that's been there since time back. And where the construction crew came along the bund wall to be able to remove this section of the bund wall, we're seeing fantastic regrowth also within the vegetation along the bund wall, and a lot of our natives plants coming back too. So we also monitor, when we go down, we monitor the water, we monitor the vegetation, we monitor the birds to see what bird life are coming back. But not just in the wetland. This wetland goes directly into the Great Barrier Reef. So we also do water qualities down at Clark's Bay to ensure that there is that it's healthy down there and nothing's disturbing, which we have some great seagrass meadows out there, and all our sea animals out there are really reliant on it. It's been fantastic. There's been no observations and to any negative effects on all the mangroves in the downstream, and we're seeing even shoots on all our new growth shoots on all our existing big mangroves. And yeah, it's a project we're so passionate about, and we're really excited. Last month we did our first. We've continued to increase our knowledge with water quality training, and we were able to gather our first eDNA water sample down there last month. So that's currently sitting in the lab, so we're really keen to see what that brings back as well. Our aspirations for this project is we want to see country healthy again. We're really keen to see, once we been able to see not just our air animals, our land and our water animals come back, and for it to be, really healthy and a beautiful area that everyone can enjoy. When we actually first started this and did the desktop analysis, 70 to 75% of the wetland would receive inundation from the salt water, which we can see as Mother Nature working her way to be able to tackle the hymenacne. What we're also doing is working with fire sticks. And in 2 weeks, we've done initial assessments, and unfortunately the wet season impacted that a bit. But in 2 weeks, we'll be putting our first cultural burn down on country. So our aim is to see how cultural burning in the sections that don't get the inundation of the salt water can help reach the understory of the hymenacne as well. So it's an amazing journey. We're learning every step of the way. We don't know what to expect, but it's exceeded our expectations at the moment. And just to see country being so healthy, for us, I think it was so busy down there that, you're on the go and working with so many proponents, and there's always jobs to do. One of my fondest memories is when Bron and I were able to sit there on that bund wall for, 5 minutes and just reflect. Have that dadari time, the quiet time with country, and just feel country again and see. And it was such an emotional time, and it was such a good feeling knowing that we're fulfilling our cultural responsibilities and making our old people proud as well. And we're creating knowledge and training and sharing that with our young ones, because they're going to be our leaders into the future. At the moment, we're working really closely with QPWS, especially in the higher levels, to more formalise the relationship we've already built. so we can embed it into some sort of, we're looking at different models where we can have a co-management plan that's more legalised in place, so we can manage this area way past my time. So for future Yui people and other partners, workers that come in for QPWS, we can just really embed this process so they continue working this journey together and care for this country. So none of this would have been able to happen or take place, or was even on our radar if it wasn't for Green Australia coming to us and bringing this concept to us, and getting Yui's and all our elders' thoughts of it was exciting from the get-go, and to reflect back about sitting around that table and just talking about this concept to now being down there and seeing, that inundation of that water and the work that Mother Nature's doing to it was really important to us, that we didn't use chemicals and that we used, we worked with Mother Nature. We always said our country, we're excited to see how it heals itself, but, for us too, it needs our helping hand, and we take, it's a responsibility for us all. And I consider ourselves really fortunate. This has created roles for Yui people as well, but most importantly, it's created strong, respectful, and lasting, I think, partnerships into the future, which we look forward to doing other projects, hopefully in the future, together on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deb. It's absolutely wonderful, fantastic project, and really encapsulates the theme of today's World Environment Day, inspired by nature, just looking at those images of how, the seawater comes back in and nature heals itself, and we're doing that for climate, for the future, and how you talk about walking side by side and that spiritual connection. It's I look forward to being able to come up and seeing all of that sort of, that change in that amazing environment that you're in. This is an opportunity for questions for both, for Deb, for Lenise, for Andrew, in relationship to the area down around the Fleurieu Peninsula. So please, if you've got any questions, send them through. But Deb, I've got one for you as a starting point. As you've had that, just that 5 seconds to sit on the bank, is there anything that you do differently, or you go, the next project, we want to do this in a different way?
You know what? Not really. The only thing when we can reflect is we had a big stakeholder meeting where we brought all our proponents together from the acid sulfate to JCU to everybody, and that was remarkable, bringing all that knowledge into the one room. And through that, we realised if we could do a do-over, we would probably do that right at the concept of the early stages, because there was still so much, everyone's got so many connections themselves, and the conversations that took place there was fantastic. And I think being able to bring that at the get-go of it, it would have brought all those partners on that journey as well through it. But other than that, look, no, there's always going to be challenges. There's going to be challenges with our internal cultural process we have to do with, time frames, getting back to, and especially when you walk in Western ways where we've got to do approvals and everything that take time, and there's a time frame and we've got to keep on that. Sometimes that could be challenging, but it was nothing that we didn't talk through together, and where we could, we were flexible and been able to work through together. So it really has, this project, I've worked on other shorter projects and done things, but this project has really shown me the benchmark of what a true collaboration with traditional owners and how we can walk together if we're all accountable, and it's been an amazing journey. And so now I expect that from other people. So
it's fantastic, and look forward to continuing to do stuff together. We have had one question from Kate, who's asked about opportunities to volunteer, or do we just work with landholders and traditional owners and parks employees? We do have volunteering opportunities. It tends to be more urban. So if you've actually been on social media, you will have seen that there's an opportunity coming up in Adelaide to get involved with one of the projects there. We've had volunteers just recently out doing work for the superb parrot and doing plantings out near Yass. So there are a range of opportunities, and if you're interested in providing technical skills or volunteering in ways, then please reach out. But there's also a whole lot of projects where it doesn't make sense, and where it's more with the traditional owners on their land with their ranges and how they want to operate, or it'll be with landholders or other people. I know we're running out of time, but please, if you've got any questions, throw them in. One for you, Andrew, and it's a mixture of a question that's come through from Karen about the future, but also I know as we've talked, we had some stuff that had the metal guards, and then there was also cardboard guards, and some of it had fire retardant in it. And so just wondering, was there anything that sort of really surprised you, or areas where you went, oh, this valley's really good, but the ridges are not? Do you just want to share a little bit more from the fire and then the next steps?
Sure. So yeah, we did use a combination of approaches on the site because, as I said before, the kangaroo population there is extensive. Would have mobs of maybe 80 or 100 roos in spots, which was terrifying if you're planting trees. Yeah, so we used a combination of cardboard guards in fenced areas, and then we used metal guards for the rest of the site. It was really interesting because post fire, you could probably see in some of those images there were still cardboard guards remaining after the fire passed over them, and not every time, but quite often there was still something alive within that guard. So for a compressed cardboard guard that wouldn't burn, and then 10 meters away from it, you'd have a 100, 200-year-old pink gum that's burnt to the core. It really defied expectation or beggared belief, basically. So yeah, I mean, fire's such an unpredictable thing, and there's so many factors that affect it: slope and wind and ground cover as well. So it's just been a real learning process, and yeah, we from here, look, it's still a little bit up in the air what's going to happen on that site. We've got 14,000 plants going in this year. We're just sort of doing further site prep to get ready for that at the moment. It has rained extensively here in SA, so we'll see how that plays out. But access there, as I said, is a real issue, so it might delay things a bit. But yeah, hopefully, we'll get some further assistance from supporters, and hopefully we can restore a lot of that area rather than just some, which is sort of on the cards at the moment.
Right, thank you for that. Just one last question, because I know we've run out of time, but there is a question about sourcing of native seed. It is a challenge in different parts of the country. With the changing climate, some seed is not setting the way that it used to, which is why looking at how we utilise seed production areas to try and produce that seed. So it is a challenge, but rest assured we're on it, and the seed team are working really hard with a lot of our partners to sort of unlock the secrets of seed. So we've run out of time, which always happens when we have these conversations. We could probably sit around and yarn for a very long time. Just want to say a humongous thank you to all of you that have dialed in for your support, for whether it's be volunteering, donations, engagements, sharing the messages, sharing the stories. Thank you so much. If you want to support us, please jump on, give us a donation. There's a QR code there, or through our website. If you've also got other queries or want to know more about the work we're doing, we're up on social media, but we're always here on the end of a phone. I'm a phone person, or the email. Just drop us a line and we'll be in touch. But thank you so much.